Friday. I hope you're having a great day so far, and I'm super excited to have Stephanie Austin. Just a quick note for anyone who is tuning in. We do have a comment section, so feel free to drop in comments there or questions during our conversation. Also, this is one of the very last episodes for Mavens of Manufacturing this year. I do have Mallory coming on, not next week, but the weekend after, and then there's potential to have someone who's presenting at Robo Business in October come on. And also Allison Gray Alice is going to be coming back on to talk about women in manufacturing and their 15th anniversary, which I'm super excited because that's being held in Chicago this year. And I'll include links and more information about those events once this episode is done and posted online. So let me get our episode started. Stephanie, welcome and thank you for joining us on Mavens of Manufacturing. I like to, give guests an opportunity to just introduce themselves and kind of talk about what their background is, and then, pitch a little bit about the company that they're working for now. So who is Stephanie Austin and how has your journey been in engineering and manufacturing?
Well, as we'll get into, is very unconventional, but I've been with Zentech for 8.5 years. It's based in Baltimore and I'm based on the East Coast. I have sort of a hybrid position where I'm at home or traveling to one of our 3 sites. So we've had Baltimore since 1998, but right before COVID, which I do not recommend, we acquired Dallas and Bloomington, Illinois. And they do the same thing that we do. So we were just kind of growing our footprint. So now we have 3 facilities that I travel to. But basically, Zentech is an electronics manufacturer, and electronics industry is huge. So many different facets and aspects, obviously growing. It touches every single other industry because you really can't build or manufacture anything without some sort of form of electronics. So our part in it is the printed circuit board, which means we're taking a bare board, which we procure, and all of those teeny tiny components, which are getting smaller by the day, and we assemble them in our factory. They're built to print. They're all custom. And it's basically robotics, but it's called surface mount technology. And it's basically a machine that applies the solder, applies the parts, bakes it, washes it, does all kinds of things, tests it. And most of our space is defense related. So everything that we're building is for the warfighter or national infrastructure, national security, things like that. So it's super fun, super interesting. Never really thought about where circuit boards came from before this.
Yeah.
So I totally geeked out on it for the last 8 years, but yeah.
Angela said, woohoo, PCBs.
Exactly. Love it.
Is this PCBAs? What is that?
Yes. Printed circuit board assemblies. So PCBAs. So we buy the PCBA and we add the A because it has to be assembled.
Awesome.
Which if you've heard about the CHIPS Act, there's this whole thing about, we're building semiconductors. Well, the chip doesn't function without the board. So we have this thing, chips don't float, because it's great that we're building chips, but the rest of the industry needs to be kind of grown in the US if you want to actually build more here, because the chip itself doesn't do anything without being placed on a board. So yeah.
Right. She's asking IPC 2 or 3.
We do mainly IPC class 3. So there are 3 classes. 2 and 3 are the most highly reliable. And so class 3 is what we mainly do because, again, it is defense. So we call it mission critical, meaning like if it's in a plane or part of a radar system, it can't fail, versus the requirements for building your iPhone are way different because you just throw it out and start over. But you can't do that with, something that's can't fall out of the sky. So good question.
You don't want to fall out of the sky. So thank you to the manufacturers that are making that.
Yeah, it's super critical, really.
Yeah.
Very complex process. So
well, great questions, Angela. Thank you for asking that. Well, Stephanie, if you want to describe your career in 3 words, what would those 3 words be?
I cheated a little on the words,
That's
but
okay.
um, like I said, unconventional, because I didn't grow up in it. Um, building blocks and no regrets, meaning I don't regret the path that I took, which was unconventional, even though I kind of am sad I didn't know about it sooner. And everything I've done up to it is a building block. And I think that's how it's important to view your career is it doesn't have to stay the same. You grow with it, which is crazy to me that at 18 we're like, what do you want to do with your life? I still don't know what I want to do with my life. So it's a crazy question to ask an 18-year-old, but we do. So
Yeah,
those are kind of my three, what comes to mind for me. So,
I love those. I think that's a great point because you mentioned this earlier too, that growing up in the 90s, girls were encouraged to pursue science. Um, and
mm-hmm,
I don't think you're the only one that has said that to me and or experienced that. And I know there are some women out there who've had, great
mm-hmm,
influencers who kind of guided them into the engineering or manufacturing pathways. But when you're in a community that doesn't really support those pathways, it's really hard to know what they are and understand and what's available. So, um, with that lack of opportunity that was presented to you in the 90s, how did that really shape the way you viewed your own career options that you were kind of considering at the time? Like, what were you interested in?
um, good question. So, yeah, I mean, I felt like I had to do the more traditional route, which might be teaching or some kind of administrative role, none of which in and of themselves are a bad thing, of course. But I so I pursued language because I've had a more artistic side forever, or that's been the
Mm-hmm.
most developed side anyway. And so I pursued language because I'm like, well, if I'm being, forced to go to college just because that's what everybody did, and I didn't feel like I fit some of these more technical pathways. So I was like, well, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to learn language because it's easy and I get to travel. And that's kind of what I did. Unfortunately, like luckily back then there wasn't as much debt issues as there is now. Like it's more of a big deal if you go to college with a useless degree and then and I call it useless in quotes because it's ultimately not, but like you could end up with 100,000 in debt,
Mm-hmm.
now. So it's a huge decision to make. Back then it wasn't, but I did, and I learned a lot. I traveled, always had a great job, but I just never really got to use it, except for a few times. But
I don't think it's unfair to call it a useless degree because I've met so many college graduates who have certain degrees in certain fields and they're like, I don't use what I went to school for. Like, my degree
mm-hmm,
is in this. I've met a couple psychology majors who are
mm-hmm,
in engineering and manufacturing, but they still do kind of use that psychology major when it comes to like emotional intelligence and leadership development. So it's not too far off that they're using it. But yeah, it's just really interesting to hear people's different backgrounds and how they ended up in manufacturing because that part of it is so
mm-hmm.
diverse. And I think that's great for how you get the best and most innovative products. You did
Yeah.
mention to me that you wish you would have found this pathway sooner. So what do you mean by that? And how do you think earlier exposure would have or could have changed the path that you took?
Um, yeah, I mean, I felt I wasn't encouraged to explore them, and I feel like I could have done just as well as anyone else. I always felt like, "Oh, I'm not smart enough for that," which is kind of silly. Um, now that I, am older and understand that, like, I really could be capable of anybody is capable of learning anything. Um, I think a lot now it starts with educating parents because and maybe our kids when they become parents they'll be more aware, but our generation, Gen X millennials, like we grew up viewing the factory as like this greasy, dark dirty place that was a dead end career. And so as parents now, like we have to encourage, like I think it's more important to encourage your kid to pursue something they love, or that they, whatever the mold is that they fit. It doesn't have to be college degree, it could be a trade, but the parents have to be made aware as well, I think, because they're the ones, like they're probably ultimately the ones like with the most influence on which direction their child might want to go. But
yeah, I remember attending a career fair, and one of the women who was like staying at the table at the underwater robotics table, she was saying how there was a young girl who came in really excited about participating in that program, as she had a lot of good questions. And her mom was just kind of confused. And then she's like, wait, this is an actual real thing, like underwater robotics exists. And she was like, yeah. And she's like, I thought she was making it up. Like, I thought it was something she saw on TV, and like this is crazy. So then she got interested because she didn't know like the possibilities that came with underwater robotics. So yeah, I strongly believe that one, parents need to be more educated, but two, they also need to be supportive if their kids want to pursue something that doesn't necessarily align with their definition of success. Because I think that was my issues.
yeah,
were like, I wanted to do all the fun and creative things, and they were like, that doesn't make enough money. You're not going to survive.
luckily my parents kind of were creatives and like kind of like dreamers, so they like were like, oh, you want to take Italian, no problem. Because I
Yeah.
think if my kid came to me right now, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get a degree in Spanish, I'd be like, well, actually Spanish is a little more, but like Italian, I'd be like, no, you're not. Just because I know now looking back. But I did say no regrets. Like, I really do feel like everything I did up till now led to the next thing. So I can't say like it was useless or a waste, but like I definitely just feel like right now the degree path you choose, it just comes at an extremely high cost that it didn't used to. So it didn't matter as much because I didn't really come out of college with a lot of debt, whereas now it would. So it's like you really have to think about it more. And I feel like there's so many more options than just your traditional college route. So that's my
Right.
only thing now, is it's just so much more expensive to make that decision, is all.
Yeah,
So
which is
yeah.
another conversation in itself. But I do want to
Yeah.
talk about you majoring in Italian, because
Yeah.
manufacturing is a global thing. So I feel like there
hmm
is some connection with that degree and in the tech stuff. So what connections are you seeing with your Italian
Well,
background? And
ironically, that's probably ultimately what got me into manufacturing, to be honest, because I was in automotive marketing and I was moving to another state, and this manufacturer in plastics was like, "Oh, you have a degree in Italian because our parent company is Italian, and we need somebody who can speak it because all of our marketing still comes out of Italy, and you would be able to work with them a lot easier." So that's the whole reason I got into it. So yeah, I mean, and I would have never ever put that together years ago, but that's why I say no regrets, and like everything happens for a reason and matters. So I did that for a year before coming to Zentech, but the fact that I had that year under my belt is what Zentech liked. Like, oh, she does marketing, but she also has a manufacturing background. So again, like I joke about it, like, how did you go from Italian to manufacturing? But I did.
yeah,
So you're right. But nothing that you do, like everything, all that experience you get, like it all matters
yeah,
in the end.
absolutely. Well, what did you learn specifically within the automotive sales and marketing space that translates really well into what you're doing now at Zentech?
I feel like manufacturing really is creative. And like, as you know, in automotive, I work for a dealership group. So like we had all these gimmicky things and like cutesy things that we did, like creative stuff that we did. And I'm like, there's no reason that we can't somehow bring the creative in. Um,
Yeah.
I still like it's different looking, but I feel like that background really helped me like think outside the box as far as it because it doesn't have to all be technical and it doesn't have to all be creative. It can be both. So,
Yeah.
um,
Do you have any
yeah.
specific examples of how you're weaving that creativity into the marketing that you're doing for such a technical space?
Well, even like in stuff that I'm designing, like I do a lot of this site aesthetics. So when customers come in, like there's the whole circuit theme everywhere. So I have like circuit decals on the wall and like even the process ID signs in the factory, like it's green and it has circuits on it. And like I'm just trying to bring out that aesthetic so that it's
It's
not
top of
just
mind.
coming onto this cold, like sterile environment.
Yeah.
Um, and I do a lot of videos on the floor of the machines themselves and how they work and like um, that brings out a lot of people's curiosity because it really is quite fun, in
Yeah.
my opinion. But bringing that awareness to people and just
Mhm.
making like an inviting, bright space is important, I think. So,
Yeah, absolutely. We have, I'm gonna pronounce your name wrong. Rocio? We need less college and more investment in apprenticeships. Absolutely agree.
yes,
Um,
yes.
I
We
I
I,
wish I wish we were like Germany in that part of it because they have a really good
mhm,
apprenticeship program in Germany. And I've met a couple of people who, even on the American side, who've gone to Germany and gone through that type
mhm.
of program, and they're so good at what they do because of their experience with that type of apprenticeship. Dude, our stories are almost identical. Love it. Emily
Oh,
is a
thanks,
cool.
Emily.
She's awesome. So you've been with Zentech for some time now.
Mhm.
What drew you into this specific company and what's kept you there? Like, what do you like about working with Zentech?
Um, well, I kind of got drawn in because where I was ended up being like organizationally very toxic. So this opportunity came up, but um, I was immediately interested, which I didn't think I would because I'm always like, I'm not sciencey. You know what I'm saying? Like it just didn't, but I was like, wow, this sounds really interesting and different and like um also because they didn't most of us that do this assembly work are pretty small companies, so a lot of times they don't even have a marketing person or it's like the salesperson is doing them. So I had this like blank slate with like no department that I could like build from the ground up, so I could immediately infuse creativity into it, and the more I've done it, the more I've like gotten into it. But yeah, I was just like, wow, this is like super interesting, super detailed, super important.
Mhm.
And not enough young people are getting into it. Not that I am really that young, but compared to like the average person in this industry, I guess I kind of am. I'm also female, so that is I don't see as many of those. So I just was like, wow, I feel like, and then it just grew from there. And I've always had the opportunity to grow and learn in it. And I like being in a small company because if you have an idea, you just walk up to the CEO, hey, I have this idea. Okay, sure. When you're in a giant corporation, that's not always as easy to do. And
Yeah,
so I've
there's
stayed because I've always learned and grown. As long as I'm not bored, I hate being bored. So as long as I'm not bored, which I'm not, then I just keep figuring out new ways to like make it interesting. So yeah.
I think it's cool that they're giving you autonomy to do what you want and
Mhm.
to tap into your natural creative talents. I just think
Yeah.
that's so much better for companies, and it is harder with larger corporations. Like there seems to be layers of approval that you need to go through
Yeah.
for
And
like a
that's
simple color change or font change.
I know, right? Yeah. And of course, like I run things by whoever I need to first, but like the idea that I can be autonomous in some ways. And speaking of apprenticeships, like we just piloted one, which we're still graduating people out of. in the beginning, someone asked about IPC. That's our industry association, and they have an apprenticeship program that you just plug and play into your company. And so that I think is so, again, so important because it's teaching you exactly what you need to know. And sometimes that's all you need. It's a shorter time period to start making good money, right? Whereas sometimes in a traditional school setting, you're spending 4 years, learning stuff and not working. Then you get out and they're like, oh, but you don't have any work experience. And you're like, I know. That's why I was in school. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So apprenticeships are like a shorter, concentrated, specific knowledge for that specific job. And for some things, that's all you need. Like the soft skills can be taught, right? So
yeah. I 100% agree. Well, with your company, like one of the things that keeps going around in this sector is this workforce challenge. Some people wanted to call it a skills gap. There's people like, no, it's not a skills gap. It's a cultural gap, or it's an awareness gap, or it's a training gap. We have a worker shortage problem. Like there's not enough people coming in as people are leaving, and then things with expanding and robotics not coming in quick enough, it's causing a problem. And one of the things that you said is you're not really competing with other manufacturers. You're competing with places like Dunkin Donuts for talent. So can you expand on that? Like what were you meaning by that statement? Because I just thought that was interesting that you called that out.
Yeah, it's crazy I'll just make up numbers, but like, let's say Dunkin' Donuts is paying $20 an hour, but so are you. So, like, a young high school graduate or whatever is like, oh, well, I know what Dunkin' Donuts is. I have no idea what the heck you guys are. And that sounds scary and technical, and I don't even know what a circuit board is, for example. And they're paying me the same amount of money to. The problem is what they're not seeing is the bigger picture of a career versus, just a paycheck. And so, like those regular, like non-technical jobs are honestly now starting to pay like what some of these like technical jobs are. And so you're truly competing with anyone and everyone. And they go for what they know. So it's like, you try to be out in schools as much as you can and raise awareness, but it'll take everybody because we're just one small company. But it didn't used to be like that, because if you went to Dunkin' Donuts, you made way less money than maybe somewhere like a technical job. But it doesn't seem to be that way now. Maybe because they're just as desperate for employees, so they've upped the ante. I don't know.
Who was I talking to? Was it one of my nieces or nephews? They were making like $15 an hour somewhere. And I'm like, to do what? And they're like, oh, I just greet people at the door. And I'm like, can I have that job? Because I'll talk people's ear off for that amount of money just to greet people at the door. So yeah, it's really interesting to see how things are changing, but then also where the younger generations are going. And like, I think it's kind of funny because there are some misconceptions that Gen Z doesn't want to work. And like my daughter loves working. Like
my daughter works full time at 19. Yeah.
But she won't work at any place that like she thinks has bullshit happening. Like she'll just be like, nope, I don't like it. And then she'll leave. And I'm like, when I was that age, I was afraid to leave because I'm like, where am I going to get another job? And she's like, I'll figure it out. And I'm just like,
anywhere, literally. Dunkin' Donuts, right? It's true. I don't know that it's necessarily, maybe some don't want to work, but I think it's more like and that's where the culture question comes in that you mentioned, is they want to go where they see that they have some sort of value, and where there's like clear expectation. I think it's just a different expectation than maybe you or I had growing up. And with this sort of traditional type of management structure that manufacturers may have, sometimes I think that's where you see a clash, because our culture probably isn't shifting quite as quickly or as like meeting the needs of like this wide age range of people who have different expectations. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't necessarily, I mean, I have 5 Gen Zers, so they're all pretty hardworking. Um,
Yeah.
so I feel like that's, I don't know, that maybe that's an easy thing to say because maybe we think that because they're quitting and going somewhere else, but it's because they probably aren't seeing how they fit more
Yeah.
than anything. But it would
I
be a
think
cool, I'm sure there's studies done on it. It would be cool to find out, like, well, why are you quitting and what matters
yeah.
to you? I'm sure there it's out there.
My daughter quit several jobs because she didn't like the culture. And she's like, that's not right. I'm not working here. I'm not staying here. And I'm like, good for you. Like you should have that voice and those boundaries set
Yeah.
up for yourselves. It's really inspiring to see that. And I just thought it was so funny how she was just like, I'll figure it out. It's okay. And I'm like, I would be freaking out if I was your
Yeah.
age doing that
My
kind of stuff.
my daughter, when she was 15, had her first summer job, and she calls me like, "Mom, my boss is terrible, and he doesn't listen to any of my ideas, and he only wants to do it his way." And I'm like, "Well, that's
Yeah.
that is kind of a lot of work cultures, unfortunately, you know."
Yeah. Well,
So,
let's get into that a little bit because I'm always curious as to how companies are really like balancing external marketing with internal culture building, but also what sort of things they're doing to engage not just the next generation of employees, but also like current employees and
mhm.
getting them to be excited about working at the company they're working at. Because I feel like the marketing department has some sort of say in that. Like I've worked in several marketing departments where depending on their attitude and their excitement, they could get other employees really excited to talk about why they're working with a company. So I feel like we
Yeah.
can be part of that culture building and really secure it and either make or break it. So if like the marketing doesn't like the company, the other employees might not like it because why
It's
would you share that story? So what are you doing to do those things?
Well, in my mind, like marketing is just as much internal as external. You like because you're competing with literally anyone for a job to keep those people, like you're selling yourself to them every day about why they should stay and why they want to be there. And a lot of the same techniques you use in external marketing use internally. But we kind of have a schedule for both. We have a schedule for all our external stuff and a schedule for internal, where it's like, okay, we do these things every month for engagement. But I kind of like ask employees what they like because I don't know that I know what they like. And that's how the whole sneaker competition came about because they're like, we want to have a sneakerhead comp. I don't even know. I didn't know what a sneakerhead was. Um, and so everybody wore their like really cool sneakers, and then we had a panel of judges, and it was something they wanted. So I think it's important to ask people like, what is it that you want to see happen? And that
Mm-hmm.
didn't even cost money really. Um, we gave out prizes because if you're familiar with Uline, it's like
Yeah.
a consumable. They send us stuff all the time, like gifts for being their customer, and then we just give them away during competitions. But it's more about just um, giving people like a break to. We had a day of games where we did like minute to win it in cornhole, and they loved it. And it not everything has to cost money because I think that's always a barrier with management. Well, that's expensive. Doesn't all have to be. Um,
Right.
but just letting them know like, hey, I see you, I see how hard you're working, and I want to appreciate you. um and that's been like we've had a lot of success with that so far, so yeah.
I think that if you can give employees a moment to take a break and just be human for a while, that really brings them together and helps them
Mhm.
become more productive. One of my favorite moments, I worked at a company that had a lot of apprentices coming in from Germany because the original founder was from Austria, I believe. And
Mhm.
he came here developed his company, and he was very connected to the German apprenticeship. So as often as he could, he would bring Germans here to America to do the apprenticeship, and then vice versa. He would have some employees go to Germany and do the apprenticeship. Well, one time, the marketing department got invited to a late night thing, they called it, and they made a schnitzel and basically like a traditional German dinner, and they had beer and everything. And it was just really nice to like be able to connect with them a little bit on a more
Yeah.
intimate level, because we never really saw them when they were there working. They just came and did what they needed to do for the apprenticeship, but then we were able to have like a cool moment with them and learn more about what they did in
Yeah,
Germany and why they were
definitely.
excited to be. Yeah, and it was good schnitzel, so I was like, you guys can do this all the time if you want.
Yeah,
um
we had a baking competition, a chili cook-off, just like where people contribute
I
and
love
everybody
those.
gets to taste it and they all get to judge their peers, just anything like that where people like some people are super into making chili, and so like anytime you can let them kind of share that
Yeah, that's
is
awesome.
it's really fun. So yeah.
Well, outside of your job, you're pretty creative. You're an artist who loves repurposing and upcycling. So how
Yes.
does that passion really connect you with your work in manufacturing?
Well, I mean, in my mind, like all of manufacturing came start like any product you manufacture started as some creative idea. It was probably received pushback, just like a lot of artists like Monet or whatever, like, oh, that technique is weird, like that's not how we've always done it. And so in my mind, like it's very similar in that regard, where there's a lot of planning that goes into it, and
Mhm.
design and structure, same as manufacturing. But for me, like I wanted to repurpose and upcycle. So I was like, oh, well, we're scrapping all these boards, like, and they're so colorful and pretty. And I bet you I was already working with like resin and wood, and I was already using like old industrial parts or like broken pottery or shells or anything that was getting thrown away and putting it in the resin and like making this cool design. So I'm like, why not circuit boards? So that's what I started doing. So I just have these little molds and I can make like bottle openers.
That's
I make
cool.
little like bowls and dishes. This is one of the ones that has industrial parts in it. So it's like, and I don't know, people are like, wow, like no one's ever, like, it's just out of the box thinking. But
Mhm.
I have made coffee tables, which is essentially one of these, but in a giant,
Yeah.
stainless steel. So I'm actually working on a coffee table now at home. It's a massive project, but I just,
Great.
I feel like, I don't know. The circuit boards are super popular, like, because I do, holiday markets and stuff, and like
Mhm.
that by far is the most popular. Like, I don't know, everybody. I've actually found that the younger generation, I used to think it wouldn't be like this, but they're actually very much into the unique, upcycled, sustainable type of stuff. Um,
Mhm.
and I feel like our generation is actually the one that buys into all that mass manufacturing stuff that you just throw away. But they're actually more appreciative of it. But yeah, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. They call them computer chips because most people, I'm like, not the only place you find a circuit board is in a computer. But
Yeah.
um, I just, it's really fun. It's therapeutic. They're not getting thrown away. They're getting reused. So why not? We have a
If you
coffee table in each of our sites in the lobby. So it's a great conversation piece for people when they come in, like, oh my gosh.
That's cool. I like if you have a link to a site that people can go and buy your stuff from, let me
Yeah.
know. I might be looking at a coffee table to actually purchase from you because I think that's cool. I think it was interesting that you said the younger generations are interested in all that upcycling stuff. I actually read an article somewhere where it was saying that, younger generations seem to be more into sustainability. And like one of the things that my daughter and her friends love to do is go thrift shopping for clothes.
Love it.
And yeah,
Love thrift stores.
they will like go to those places to find a lot of their clothes and even some of the things. And like when she went college dorm shopping, that's where she would go and try to figure out what she wanted included in her house. So that's really cool that you have it there as a piece of art in your facility.
Yeah.
Can you get more into like how you're seeing the world of manufacturing really combining with the form of art of designing, creativity, and building? Because I feel like there's a lot of creatives out there. As you mentioned before, you're not really sciencey, and I
Right.
feel like there's a lot of creatives out there who think, well, if I want to pursue engineering and manufacturing, then maybe the spot for me is in marketing and sales. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there's other places within this sector that they can apply their talents, but also apply it in areas where it can be more technical. So have you seen that happening? Maybe not just at Zentech, but other places where creatives are actually pursuing more technical opportunities because of their creativity?
Well, for one, I feel like manufacturing is essentially being presented with a problem or a challenge and figuring out like how you're going to produce something, right? And
Mm-hmm.
all of that requires creativity. So, yeah, it's not your standard art, like artist, like traditional art, but it requires creativity. And also, I feel like most problems are solved through diversity. So, the more types of people we invite into manufacturing, the better. So, like, instead of assuming that everybody that comes in fits the specific mold of a type of person, like where a creative might not feel like they fit, I really feel like that does us a disservice because all of those creative people are the ones thinking outside the box and solving those problems. And so together, I feel like when you collaborate with all kinds of different people, genders or ages, is when you really see success. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think creativity is so important because you're constantly like, well, what if we tried it this way? It would be more efficient. Or like if we design it this way. And I feel like there's totally a place for it.
Yeah.
But
I
I don't
talked
necessarily think the creatives feel invited into that space or see it. I didn't start to see it till I got into it. So we
Yeah.
have to like build that awareness more.
Yeah. One of the interesting stories that I've heard within this sector was a woman who's an engineer and she wrote the books called Goldie Blocks. I need to look up her name because I can't remember it right now off the top of my head, but she was an engineer and one of the struggles that she had was what did she call it? Space visualization or something like that, where when she looked at something flat, she couldn't picture it in a 3D space. And she is like, the types of play that guys and girls stereotypically go through are very different from one another. So she's like, when I
Mhm.
was growing up, I was encouraged to play with dolls and read books. And she's like, there also were studies and things that I were a part of where we would observe younger girls. And one of the things that they wanted to play with was a book, not necessarily building blocks. And guys are always encouraged to build things or put things together. So that skill of like visually seeing something in a 3D space is typically
Mhm.
higher in men than in women. So what she did is she wrote this book called Goldie Blocks to combine girls like of reading, but also get them to build things as they read the story so that they can build up that skill set, which is very crucial in engineering.
Mhm.
But I think that's like creative in its own right, where you have to like puzzle things together in a 3D space. Oh, Emily put her name down. Debbie Sterling. Thank you, Emily. I appreciate you. um,
Yeah, it's Definitely true. And actually I had gone around a few years ago and like interviewed some of our employees like, "Hey, why do you like this?" And they came up with
Mhm.
all these like really interesting um descriptions, but the one girl was like, "Well, I'm crafty and I love seeing how things are put together and how things work. So this totally makes sense for me." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you're right." Or people who the one my one quality inspector was like, "It's like where's Waldo?" There's this satisfaction when I find the Waldo on the board and I know like I found it and fixed it before like the defect, before it went out. But like being able to like describe it in those terms, and I feel like we need to start describing it like, "Hey, are you crafty? You might like
Yeah.
this because this is like the correlation." Or even my manager here said, because we have hand soldering, which is truly an art and very, very delicate. So when it can't go through the machine, it has to have parts of the board hand soldered. He's like, "I'm telling you, nail techs, they can put those designs on a nail, and I totally see the connection." But you have to like make those connections for people, but trying to think like, okay, well, what would draw people in? Like what connection can we make for them? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, would you go to a nail salon and like recruit people? That would be kind of weird, but trying to make those connections like, well, what are other people doing that's like a similar thing that we could try
Yeah.
and like recruit them? And it's so
I,
important.
I think that's cool. Now I'm going to go into a nail salon and be like, you'd be really good at this.
I
I think
know.
I think one of the other issues that you touched on too is how polarized career paths often feel by gender.
Mhm.
In your opinion, how can we break those walls down? Because you don't see a lot of there is a rising in women in welders, and I do see a lot more interest from women in doing things like CNC machining, but like IT, for example, I've talked to a lot of women who are like, yeah, I'm the only person. And then I've noticed that in like mechanical engineering, there seems to be
Mhm.
more guys there, where biochemical engineering, I think it was, where more women kind of, or chemical engineering, more women try to gravitate towards. But how can we break down those barriers so that everyone is really kind of open to pursue anything that they want without feeling uncomfortable about it?
I mean, it is so much going to take everyone, but if everyone were doing their part, but I feel like it has to start earlier than high school, like even in elementary school. And they are doing it more because my nephews like are, I see all the clubs they have in elementary school, but like more offering more and allowing like everybody to explore it. But it would be interesting if they, how you'll do those like career testing and like aptitude testing. I wish
Yeah.
they would start those in elementary school because then you could start developing it sooner. Like, oh, it says here that you like to see how things work. And like, I just feel like we have to start earlier, but just one example of what we do, because we do manufacturing day, which you've
Mhm.
probably heard of, manufacturing day in October. But
Yep.
we invite high school students, and again, I don't know if there are insurance things about like certain like age groups coming out
Ages.
on our
Yeah.
floor, but we buy these little board kits on Amazon and they get to actually build a circuit board. They do everything but the soldering because we can't let them solder, but they get
Yeah.
to watch it be soldered. And then it lights up and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I made this thing and I followed the directions and I put it together." And we've done that several years now, and it's like I've had kids who are like, "Oh my gosh, this is way better than physics class." Like just showing them like, "Hey, this is how this actually works." And we've had a couple students come back after coming to one of ours and been like an intern with us and things like that. But more things where they get to actually come in and it's hands-on and they can do it is, I think, important. And that's just one tiny little drop in the bucket. But I feel like getting and teaching them younger and exposing them younger is important.
Yeah, the one big disappointment that I have with trade shows is some of them have age caps, which I completely understand from a liability perspective. But
Mm-hmm.
I mentor a high school team. One second. Angela says, I have a blog post on engineering most frequently selected by women. Okay,
Oh,
Angela, I'm going to take a look at that. Thank you for sharing that. And then Rocio, in the 70s, aptitude tests were required in Mexico City to apply to public schools starting in kindergarten. That's
wow.
interesting. Yeah.
But
Oh,
they could have little tracks or like anything in elementary school where they're like, I don't know if it's clubs or classes, like we do these electives in high school. Like why can't
yeah.
younger kids do it, you know?
There's a, what do they call it? A vocational school or something. There's a new school here in the community I live in. It's been around maybe for the last 5 or 6 years, and they started out with only a certain amount of grades. And then I think this year, next year, they'll have K through 12, but initially it was
Mhm.
only like certain grade levels. But starting in kindergarten, they do tap into what kids are interested in. So they ask questions like, do you like playing with blocks? Do you like to color? Do you like
Mhm.
to put things together? And they separate them that way. And then after each year, it's kind of like a performance review where they revisit what their interests are, because they're like, yeah, they probably will change their mind.
Yeah.
But everything in this school is open layout. So you can see all of the ducts, you can see all of the wires. When you go by the boiler room, they have a glass window and they label every single part. So they're like
So
trying to
cool.
get kids to see like how things are put together, and then they explain it. And it's very like hands-on type education, and it kind of looks like a Google facility basically, where you just go in and they have
Yeah.
pictures of
We need
seating.
more of that.
Yeah.
And
So go
and
ahead.
just more openness to seeing how a student like thinks and functions and trying to meet their needs instead of like jamming them into this specific mold or career path, which they're doing more and more of. But like I have a neurodivergent child, so I understand like we have to tap into that more too, because
Yeah.
even if socially speaking, like they struggle, they could be so good at so
Mhm.
many things, but maybe they don't interview well because they're not as good at like looking you in the eye or communicating. And so we might write them off because of that when they could like really be like such an asset. But trying to like meet those kids where they are and where their skills are and try to like help them discover that type
Yeah.
of thing instead of being like, well, you really need to do this or like you won't be successful if you do that, and being more open because everybody is so different
Yeah.
and they're going to feel more fulfilled and happier in life doing, which probably leads to like better families and less drug and alcohol abuse and all these things because you have like these more peaceful, happier people, right? Because
Yeah.
they're not like, I want to be this, but no one will let me, you know, kind of
Yeah.
thing. So,
Um, but I always tell my daughter, I'm like, you're young enough to change your mind, even if you were in your 40s or 50s, you're still young enough to change your mind. Like if you're not happy, pursue that happiness. And yeah, it'll be a struggle initially, but it's easier when you're happy doing what you love. And then
mm-hmm.
my comment on the trade show, I mentor this team here, and I brought them to IMTS, and they were so amazed at the scale of things because they're so used to seeing it at a certain size, because
Mm-hmm.
that's all schools can afford, and they weren't really connecting what they were building to the real world. So when they went to IMTS, they were seeing these different companies building these different applications for things and how it's affecting their lives, and they became more interested, in their conversations with the engineers and the salespeople were more engaging, and they actually took what they learned from the show and applied it to their robot for the first competition, and they won like an additional award and got invited to
Whoa.
another event to it. So I just wish there was a way to like make a mini trade show for kids who are under a certain cap that some of these trade shows are required to have because of liability reasons. Because when kids see that stuff, they're just like, what is this? And how can I get involved? Like it really strikes their curiosity.
A lot of manufacturing is hidden behind the product. Like our circuit boards, nobody sees them. They don't realize
Yeah.
they're in everything that they interact with and use. So like they have no concept of like the amount of manufacturing and like just what's available to them and how complicated it is, and that it's like clean and it's technical and it's a good living wage, like but it's not visible to them, which is why it's important that we're out in the community inviting kids in and like, here's what we do, this is what it looks like to be out there working. I mean,
Yeah.
so important.
I love it. Well, Stephanie, we're kind of getting close to time here, but I wanted to see what you're most excited about next. So, like, what are you excited about at Zentech? Like, are there upcoming shows you guys are planning for? And then on the personal level, what are you looking forward to?
We do a lot of defense equipment shows. So like we don't show at them, but we walk them because it's super important. We talk to our current customers and try to gain new ones, obviously, but also seeing what that technology is that's out there because it's constantly changing. And like where, like right now, there's a lot of talk on drones, right? That's like the big thing. And so kind of understanding like where the technology is going is important. So that's exciting. Personally, let's see, I just moved to back to my home state. So like just getting my shop set up and like exploring the area, and that's been pretty exciting. But I did put my website in the comments. I think the comments go away though. But
in the private chat it does, but I'll add it to this one. Hold on.
Okay. That's my website, but it's also the name of like my Instagram page and my Facebook page if anybody's interesting. I try to show like, that's the other thing, like just like manufacturing, I'm trying to show the process of how I make things, which is super fun to do because I'm basically making things that don't exist, taking stuff that's not meant for and then making it into something new. So I'll often show the process of how I make the coffee tables and stuff like that. We talked before we got started about like how the news can be pretty heavy. So in my social media, I'm just looking to put creativity out there to make people smile and be something positive, because a lot of what you're seeing on your feed is not positive. So always a positive space where I am. I think that's important because there really is so much good out there. It's just we're not as loud maybe as the negative stuff. So
yeah, I love that. I was so looking forward to this conversation because the last few weeks have been heavy, and I'm just like, I cannot wait to talk to Stephanie and learn why she got involved in engineering and manufacturing. And I think that this sector is just amazing because it does provide people to be proud of something like what they're creating and building, because it does help make our lives a little easier and more simple to live. But for anyone who's considering, a career pathway but think manufacturing isn't for them, what would you say to change their mind about that?
I would just say start having conversations with people. Like, don't be afraid that it's kind of out of your comfort zone, because it definitely was outside of mine. But I feel like most of the time you're truly capable of learning anything with the right training and the right skill set. But don't be afraid to think outside the box or be outside your comfort zone, or ask them if you can have a tour of their facility, or it depends on where you are. Like if you're in school, go talk to do they still call them shop teachers? I don't even know. But
That
like
makes some
go
sense to me, yeah.
explore those classes. Like if you get electives, like explore those classes. Like the worst that you're going to find out is, oh, I don't like this. Okay, great. Now you know. But if it's still unknown to you, then you'll never know until you like explore it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
definitely.
Stephanie, if you have one ask for our audience, what would your ask be for them?
Get out in your communities. Talk to people about what you do. And number one, because it's positive and we need that right now. And just talk to people about what you do and why you love it, and encourage people to like really pursue the things that are important to them, and be an encouragement to them. Maybe they don't have that person at home, so you are like the only person. That's as much as you can in your corner of the world, make it a better place, because it's really important these days. So yeah.
We need it. Definitely be kind to one another. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
joining me on Mavens of
It was fun.
Manufacturing. I'm super excited to check out your link because I might be ordering something from you soon.
Yeah.
For anyone who has any questions for you or about Zentech, what is the easiest way? I have a fruit fly flying in my face. I'm sorry. What is the easiest way for them to connect with you or get a hold of you?
I mean, I'm on LinkedIn all the time, which it's Stephanie Austin. I don't know how, but if you look up Zentech Manufacturing, you can also find me that way. That's probably the
Okay.
best way. Yeah. Or you can always follow me on my other art pages and get a hold of me that way. But
Awesome.
yeah. So
Okay. Well, I'll be creating a recap article for next week too. So a lot of that information will be included in the article. So if you guys
cool.
want to connect with her, please do. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and please take care of one another and be kind with one another. Because like Stephanie said, it is much needed in the world. And yeah, just have a great weekend, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
This episode of Mavens of Manufacturing has been sponsored by Z Ink Solutions. Z Ink Solutions. This isn't your grandmother's copywriting service. We provide copywriting and copy editing services that provide impactful text and memorable storytelling for a variety of brands and industries. Contact us today at zinkSolutions.com. That's z-inksolutions.com.